Okay, let's continue on now and make that connection between decimals and fractions. Now, what we need to understand is that both decimals and fractions are ways of talking about parts of a whole. So we have done tons of fractions in the last couple of weeks, so let's start with that. We are very good now at telling that this diagram here represents 8/10. So you heard me just say it there, 8/10 can be written as the decimal 0.8, 8/10. Now for the next one, as a fraction, what fraction is, which part of this picture is blue, we don't have tenths here. We have fifths. So we've done a really good job in the past of representing this as the fraction 2/5. So let's start with 2/5. Insert that math. Awesome. Okay, so now you're going to see why it was so important that we learned about equivalent fractions. Because in order to write this as a decimal tenths, we need to make this into a decimal out of, or a fraction out of 10. So we recognize that to make this out of 10, we could just double the denominator and therefore double the numerator. So multiplying this 2/5 by 2 is going to give us 4/10. Let's insert that fraction. Okay, so hopefully at this point we all understand that 2/5 is equivalent to 4/10. And as soon as we see a fraction out of 10, we know that it can be written as a decimal tenth. So this is now equal to 0.4. Awesome. Okay, let's move on because it looks like decimal tenths you're going to have no problem with. So as we move on in our file here, I'm going to show you 3/10. So we just practiced this model up in our Minds On activity. So you can see that right here we have 3/10. So we can write this either 3 out of 10 pieces or 0.3. So let's go ahead and do that in our space here. 3/10. I'll insert that into the math space. And we can also represent that as 0.3 and insert that into the math space. Now, one thing that we learned earlier this year is why I included this picture over here of the hundredths. So what we need to also recognize is the same amount of colored in spaces as tenths, you can represent that as hundredths as well. So you do need to recognize that 0.3 is also the same thing as 0.30. Okay, and I'm just going to go over that one more time to make sure we all have a good understanding of that. Not that we need this today, but as we continue to move forward tomorrow and talk about percentages, we're going to need that. So you can see that here, 3 out of 10 is the exact same amount colored in as 30 of this hundredths grid. So just tuck that away for tomorrow. Now, in the meantime, we can go on to the last one here because you can see that there's part of a row colored in here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/10 colored in and 1, 2, 3 hundredths, or I could say 53 hundredths. Now to write that as a decimal, or as a fraction, sorry, I'm going to say 53 out of 100 are colored in. I'm going to insert that into our space. Or I could say 0.53 are colored in. Okay. So I'm just going to enlarge those and make them pretty. I'll leave them up there for you so that when you're practicing your own, you can come back and have a look at that. Here's your chance to practice converting between fractions and decimals, working in tenths and hundreds. Good luck, everybody. I know you'll do fabulous.